Hi there and welcome to My Opinion Matters. My name is Andrew Zettel, your host. This is the show where we talk to University of Waterloo students to get their opinions on a whole wide range of issues. Today on the show we're going to be talking about Ontario politics and the PC leadership race that has happened so quickly after dropping Patrick Brown for allegations of sexual misconduct. We're also going to be talking about marijuana legalization. It looks like it's not going to be legal in Canada on July 1st like we thought. And we'll also bring it home with the co-op fee increase. It now costs almost as much as an arts course here at UW. We'll talk about all of that and more, but first let's introduce our panelists. Marcus is in his fourth year of chemistry, Noor is in her fourth year of political science, and Seneca is in his third year materials and nanoscience. Welcome on the show, everyone.
Thank you.
Cool. So let's get right into it with Ontario politics. We have this article that we've posted in the description below. Dropping Brown has helped the Ontario Tories according to a poll, and they've had their first debate and they're in full swing now, 4 candidates. I want to get everyone's opinion real quickly on who they think the front runner is in this Ontario PC leadership. It seems like whoever wins this party race could very likely be the Premier of Ontario. So Seneca, let's start with you. Who has impressed you so far in this race?
Well, Andrew, I'm kind of tied between Mulroney and Elliott. Elliott's a seasoned politician. She was an MPP and she's an auditor, or was an auditor. And I trust her when she says she can get 20 cents on every dollar of taxpayer money. And Mulroney was a lawyer, and her father was quite a successful MP, or PM, even if he was despised by the voter base.
Okay, Noor, what are your thoughts?
I think I'm inspired by Elliott because, again, of her illustrative background, but I'm also looking at Greenwich Allen as a newer face, as a newer kind of political opinion in Ontario politics. She does have some very feisty views, but I think that's what we need, that kind of outsider perspective at times in politics.
And social conservatism.
Interesting. Marcus, what do you think? A social conservative route for the party, or are you leaning in a different direction?
Yeah, so personally not for me, but I think everyone mainly has Christine Elliott as the front runner, the person most likely to win, but my dark horse candidate would not be the obvious one of Mulroney or something like that. I honestly have Tanya as the dark horse candidate because I think there's a lot of people in the PC party that are very upset with how things went in the past under Brown. A lot of them seem to have no sympathy for what happened, even if something happened wrong, because they felt betrayed by him and they felt like their voices weren't being heard in the party. And so I really think that she might have a real good shot at this, surprisingly.
Yeah, watching the TVO debate, it seemed as though, she doesn't have, this is Tanya Greenwich Allen, it doesn't seem like she has a whole lot in the way of policy, but it's kind of twofold. It's repeal the sex ed curriculum, but also this kind of grassroots, get back to the grassroots. And some of them have been paying lip service to that, Doug Ford as well. How important do we think, Noor, is that the party needs to reconnect with people who felt disaffected by Patrick Brown?
I think it's really important to reconnect with the grassroots because it is, after all, they're the ones who are being affected by this whole politics drama. I think it's very important to bring those voices in who were previously isolated or alienated by Patrick Brown's career in politics, so to speak.
And I'm wondering, Doug Ford had such an interesting career in Toronto politics, and we can't help but remember his late brother Rob Ford and all of the turmoil at City Hall. Seneca, what does his presence in the race mean for the party?
To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the guy. I probably contrary to most of the panelists here, I did like his brother. I thought his brother was a decent mayoral individual and multiple time candidate. The cocaine thing aside, he did manage to increase the fiscal responsibility of the Toronto government, and that's something that is applaudable. And I don't know. I don't think Doug is the best candidate. I don't think he's the worst, but I think he, at least from the debate, what I saw was someone who was not so willing to negotiate with other people, which I think is a foundational thing in politics. I think they have to be willing to work with others, and I think that's one of the reasons he lost the mayoral race when he ran after his brother's cancer. So I'm not a huge fan.
I'm wondering, Marcus, we can't help but consider the people's familial ties. Like, are we getting to this point in Canada after Trudeau, where we're really falling into political family dynasties?
Yeah, it's all not quite a banana republic, but this is actually a really big concern of mine that I've sort of had with Mulroney, and especially why I won't, at least right now, I can't throw my full support behind her. That we are becoming a society where it seems to be that your main qualification seems to be if you had family connections in politics. Justin Trudeau, I think it's safe to say, would not be in this job he's in right now without having his father be who he is. And I think we need to be very careful that we don't slide down this road where we just take really popular people who have big names, and write on the names of their family members, and really look for people that are qualified and have the necessary experience, as opposed to letting people who have never had experience in politics sort of jump in and be the leader of the country or the province or anything, and just let them fast track that route because they had a parent or a brother or family connections involved in politics. It's really dangerous. I hope we don't go that.
Well, let's back up and consider the fact that Mulroney, for instance, isn't just qualified or not by her father's standards.
Yeah.
She's also was a successful lawyer, and she was pushed by her party to consider running for the York Simcoe and riding. And it's not. She made the decision ultimately on her end, but I don't think that was her modus operandi.
But right. She stopped. Like once the election, the was called. She went right away without.
But I don't like those. I agree. Dynasties are bad. We see the problem in Canada. We see it in the U.S. We've seen it emerge in almost every Western democracy. But the flip side is they have qualifications of themselves, independent of their family name.
Of course they do, but if she didn't have her name as her name, like there's tons of successful lawyers out there who presumably are conservative, and we could easily have them all run. They're very smart.
Media attention would be far less. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think
and very importantly, she is a rookie.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I don't think the media attention would be any less, because there's also Jagmeet Singh, who is a lawyer and he's in politics. I don't think he has any family connections. Then there's a range of other people.
Also a former Ontario MPP, Jagmeet Singh. Yeah.
Exactly, and Greenwich Allen doesn't have any family connections, and they're making it just fine. And there's also the idea that on the flip side, if you're a complete political outsider, there is problems too. Like how are you going to govern? What kind of credentials do you have? So not that family name completely brings that kind of makes you all of a sudden qualified to govern, but there are exceptions. So
what makes a good politician though? Is it policy development, or is it or is it like democratic election? Because when it comes to qualifications, I like the fact that some politicians, veterans, might know the system, but not knowing the system is very much a value too. When you have people that know.
Where else would we say this? Is it better if your doctor doesn't know your system?
Exactly.
Like you would allow like some guy to just do an operation?
And that's my point. You want people with good policy background to design policy that affects the public.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about policy, because the one policy that has kind of completely changed in the PC party, and all the leadership candidates seem to be on board with, is opposing the carbon tax.
Oh,
and the platform put forward by Patrick Brown and the party membership really relied heavily, it seems, on the carbon tax for billions of dollars to fund the rest of the platform.
Relied heavily is an understatement. That in order to fund everything that they promised in the People's Guarantee, they're going to have to pass the carbon tax. And whether they want to or not is kind of not up to the province. Yeah. There's a federal mandate, they're going to do it, or unless they keep cap and trade. Cap and trade is highly unpopular from the Conservative Party, so if they scrap cap and trade, then the federal government's carbon tax comes into effect immediately. If that's the case, then is the provincial government really going to say no to billions of tax dollars? Of course not. It's an infusion of cash. Ontario needs an infusion of cash more than almost every other province.
Yeah, they desperately need. You're 100% right, and it's very so. The move, or once Patrick Brown made the move to go for a carbon tax, where the base was not really with that yet. They were a little bit behind that. It was guaranteed that all these leadership candidates were, or at least one was going to propose scrapping the carbon tax, and then they'd all have to jump on it because they have no choice. but it's very, very worrying that none of them have proposed spending cuts. What all these candidates should do is, if they want to propose getting rid of the carbon tax, they need to explain how they're going to fight that against the federal government, of course. And they also need to say where they're going to cut spending, because otherwise we're going to be in massive debt, and that's going to be our generation that pays it.
Well, we're already in massive debt, and it is our generation that is paying.
Yeah.
Noor, do you think Ontarians generally want to see this kind of action on the environment and to combat climate change? Do you think people support a carbon tax or care at all?
I think people don't want to pay more taxes, but they still want to support environmental change.
So they might be conflicted.
They're very conflicted, and this is why Ontario politics is even more complex than it needs to be, because on one hand there is all these great policy initiatives and, oh, we're going to do this and carbon tax and everything, but then again there is huge debate on taxation and how it's going to be achieved. So there's a gap there, and I think this race is going to be about who can effectively bridge that gap for people and make that information accessible to the grassroots. And I'm not definitely saying that this is a Greenwich Islands year, but this is the kind of thing that is needed, and this is the kind of thing that will in the end decide who wins the race.
Everybody hates taxes, but everybody expects public services. And so the environment, I would say, in Andrew's direct question was, yeah, Ontarians care about the environment. It is something that affects all of us, and certainly our generation does, because we're the ones who have to pay the price for the previous generation's arrogance that they can destroy the environment and get away with it forever. It's not a God-ordained miracle that the earth survives.
Mm-hmm. If I want to run through real quick, if you had to pick a candidate for leadership right now that you think had the worst chance of succeeding against Kathleen Nguyen and Andrew Horvath in the election, who right now of the four would be the worst candidate? Let's start with you, Marcus.
If I had to pick one who I thought would perform the worst, Tanya Granish-Allen. She seems to have a very bold vision, which I think is going to work great for her in the leadership race. I don't think that will play out as well for her in the general election.
Noor?
Doug Ford.
Doug Ford. Okay, and why? Walk us through that a little bit.
I think the other candidates are just a little more stronger.
Okay, I see. Seneca?
I'm going to have to go with Doug Ford as well. I see Marcus has some really good points about Tanya, but the problems there I see are, if we just look to our neighbors down south, political outsiders are popular. People don't like politicians. They don't like veteran politicians because they see waves of corruption, they see waves of inaction, promises that get made that are never kept. And when you have that, it doesn't matter how substantive your public policy efforts are. If you don't achieve anything, or perspective is everything. And if perspective is you don't achieve anything, then you don't achieve anything. And the taxpayers aren't going to support that again when it comes to voting. And I think that because of that, Tanya stands a strong chance, if she's put up there, a risky chance of becoming the premier. And that concerns me a little bit, but Doug Ford, I think, will be the weakest candidate if he's chosen for the
So,
Conservative
do you
Party.
not think that Doug Ford has a lot of the qualities that maybe a Trump would have with an unexpected election then?
No, because he's
Like the sharpshooter,
he's shown himself now to be just as much of a cunning politician as anyone else, whereas Tanya hasn't. She hasn't played that card yet, and I think she's safer in that regard. But I don't know. I mean, Trump had it, and that's what I'm comparing her to. And she's not quite as close to Trump as perhaps I should compare.
So I want to just briefly touch on one of the topics that was raised in the TVO debate. And this has to do with Patrick Brown. I mean, the PC party is in this situation because of the sexual misconduct allegations against Patrick Brown. And now he's mounting quite a forceful campaign to clear his name. And the candidates have mostly pledged to allow him to run as a candidate if he's able to clear his name, whatever that means, whatever standard we apply to that. Do we think there's a chance that he could run again as a candidate, and that he might be leader of the PC party someday? What do you think?
His political stature has been significantly altered, and I don't think anybody just bounced back from this kind of an allegation. Sure, he could run again, he could have his name cleared again, whatever that espouses, but I don't think he could ever go up to that level again because of the current climate that we're in. Me Too is being taken very seriously. Sexual misconduct and all the sexual harassment cases since Harvey Weinstein's are very, very serious allegations. I don't think you just bounce back from it just because your name is cleared. It's all about the negative reputation that you get, all the media attention. I personally don't see his career going back unscathed to what it was before this at all.
Seneca, do you agree?
I'm somewhere in between. I gotta give him credit that he's handled the situation somewhat well from the perspective of the accused. He didn't attack the accusers. He didn't nominally apologize and said he's trying to clear his name for the record. I don't think he's going to recover his political stature. I think that is completely handicapped. His legs have been swept out under him. He might be able to run again, sure, but I don't think he'd win. Now, he wouldn't win in the PC party anyhow because he lied about figures. He said 200,000 members, there's less than 133, and the interim chair has ordered an entirely new investigation into voter rolls and party participation rolls. And I don't know, I don't see that as happening, but Noor brings up a really good point about the Me Too campaign. It's taken seriously, and I'm glad it has, and we sympathize with the accusers, and that's good. We should, but at the same time, we have to remember that changing stories, which is what's happening right now, was what threw the Ghomeshi trial. And so, if you want to have stuff like this be successful, and yes, someone did sexually harass you, or someone assaulted you, then you have to be 100% accurate in your story when you come out about those things, because otherwise it takes you down just as much as it takes down the other person. So his career might not come back, but if he did it legally, then what we're criticizing the man for is legal actions.
And
that's my concern.
Yeah, and there's a great point you brought about now. To some extent, it's the other stuff around Patrick Brown and his relationship to the party that will help sink him as well. Certainly there's no small amount of irony that Christine Elliott, who ran against him, who lost, is now running again. Do we think this is kind of the nail in the coffin of Patrick Brown's career?
Honestly, I don't think so. Assuming that he's able to, we've never seen someone come back from any of these types of accusations. They normally have to go away. President of the United States excluded, of course. But with things that are coming out of CTV, and he's suing CTV for what they've admitted to have been misrepresenting the story. If you combine that with the fact that he's extremely popular in his riding of Barrie, he's very well liked. He's got a lot of people who still support him, who want to see him leader. If he plays his cards right, he could definitely make his way back in. If he does clear his name, and he proves to be false, whatever that might happen to be, maybe not everyone believes him. That's possible. But if he in some respect manages to clear his name, he could easily become leader of the PC party again, or as he thinks himself, he still thinks he's the leader of the party.
That's a good point, but there's one thing to condition here. I personally don't like democracies deciding guilt.
Yeah.
And so whether he can prove his name or not, if it goes to a court, or if we can't ever figure it out, democracies don't clear verdicts. And Trump treated it that way. Trump treated his election as saying, doesn't matter that I was accused by 20 women of sexual harassment and assault, because I was elected president, so none of those allegations matter anymore. And I don't like the idea that becoming party leader or becoming premier might nullify the reasonableness of some of these accusations.
So
that's my concern.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like if he does manage to clear his name in this sense, like where accusers retract, or he's coming out with supposed proofs that he didn't do these things. Even if he could do this, he very well could be there could be a very big vengeance from people who are like, he was ousted, like this was an inside job, or name the conspiracy theory that might happen.
Politics is that kind of, what do they say, a week in politics is like a year or something like that, things can change so quickly.
He could really get
that's a really good point.
We want to hear your opinions on Ontario politics. There's so much we could talk about on this. We could go all day on this. Leave us a comment below and share this with your friends if you want to get the conversation going.